Welcome, everybody, to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and in particular to a discussion of Senate Bill 5236, reforming the three strikes regime. This bill, I believe, more than any that I've had in my 15 years, is about simple justice. The Three Strikes Initiative set a very wide net, and it caught a lot of people who really do deserve to be sent up for life without possibility of parole. I believe that there are some people who deserve that sentence. But not every one of the 314 people who have gotten that sentence deserves it. We need to understand what that sentence is. That means that you are thrown away, that your life is not important, that you are clearly a second-class citizen because of the crimes that you have committed. And I don't doubt that that applies to some people. That's hard to say. But it doesn't apply to everyone who's got caught up in this very, very wide net. There are some people whose offenses are all what we call Class B felonies, not murder, rape, kidnapping one, none of that. Robbery second degree is one, a robbery in which, in many cases, nobody's hurt. Assault second degree, yes, it's a violent offense, but it's an offense that arises from a fist fight. 3 of those, with no enhancements for weapons and no sex offenses, leaves a very small sliver of the three-strike population. Of those 314, this bill will affect between 16 and 20 known current offenders and a very small number of the flow of other offenders from the courts. And all it does, after 3 strikes, after the 15th anniversary of the 3rd incarceration, no good time, that's 15 hard years, calendar years. It simply allows those 16 to 20 people to go before the Indeterminate Sentence Review Board, our current version of parole board, and to show that they meet all of the criteria the parole board has historically used to allow some inmates to be released. They have to show that they're remorseful. They have to show that they have availed themselves of all of the educational or psychological treatment or anger management or drug and alcohol programs that were available to them inside the walls. They have to show that they have a family or friends or a job, some index of stability in the outside world if they're released. And if they are released, and that's a case-by-case decision that the ISRB makes, then they go for 2 years to be supervised like every other returning felon by the Department of Corrections, the community corrections officers. And those 2 years they'll be observed, talked to, and certainly kept under some high degree of supervision. And then finally they get to rejoin the unsupervised, that's the rest of us. This doesn't apply to the vast majority of people who are truly committed to a life of violence and who do not allow themselves to be rehabilitated. But it does apply to those people who make the most of themselves, and you're going to meet one today, Stephen Dozier. There are others, Vance Bartley, Gerald Hankerson, who have been released from similar circumstances, from life without parole, and who have shown themselves to be honest, upstanding citizens willing to contribute to this country, to this state. We're not doing other people a favor. We are doing ourselves a favor. And we are doing them justice by allowing people who are trying to make the most of themselves to give them that opportunity. So with that, I'd like to introduce first our King County Prosecutor, Dan Satterberg, and following him, Stephen Dozier. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. It's true that under the current law that we make no distinction among the 314 people who are in prison under the persistent offender law. We don't distinguish between those who are there for murder and rape and those who are there for much lesser crimes. And I think the proper analysis that we have to engage in is what's the least that you can do in this state in order to earn a life sentence under 3 strikes. This bill identifies that group. It's a very small subgroup, less than 5% of the total number of offenders. And what it does is it institutes a review mechanism so that there'll be a parole board that will review the history and the behavior within the prison system. And what a powerful message that will send to those who are locked up, that your behavior matters while you're in prison. And it may actually be the key to your release someday. The prosecutors around the state of Washington are unanimous in support of this bill. We think it helps make the system more fair. We think that it helps us do what we do every day, which is to distinguish among the offenders who come before us and say, this group is a danger to society and a life sentence is appropriate, and look at another group and say, no, this group we can deal with in another way. You know, prior to 3 strikes law, the standard range for 3 robbery in the second degrees or 3 assault in the second degrees was 15 to 20 months. 15 to 20 months. This bill requires a sentence of 15 years. So it's not soft on crime. This is still a very tough approach, and it recognizes that people who are committing these persistent offenses need to be dealt with in a serious way. But it does not just throw away the key and say, we're never going to look at you again. These particular crimes, this robbery 2, assault 2, they are crimes that young men tend to commit who have drug addiction or substance abuse problems. We lock these people up when they're 25. Well, today they're in their 40s, and they may not be the same person that we sent there 15 years ago. All this bill says is, let's look at them, and let's establish a way to review a risk assessment tool for the parole board to be able to say, we think this person can be released in the community with community supervision conditions, and we're going to follow them in the community. And I'll guarantee you there'll be some of the best behaved citizens in the state of Washington, because if they commit a crime, they're going back to serve the rest of their life sentence. So the reason the prosecutors support this is that it allows us to make this important distinction between those who do need to be put away for the rest of their lives and those who don't. And the opportunity for people to change, we have to recognize that that's part of our reality too. In the end, this bill makes the system more fair, and it is all about justice. It's about increasing the acceptance of the process and the result of our justice system. So I'm proud to be a supporter of this, and the prosecutors around the state think this is a good idea. I will turn it over now to Stephen Dozier, who was the first and only person granted clemency in the state of Washington for his 3-strike sentence.
I come today in support of this bill due to the fact that many years ago I made similar choices that those that are still behind bars on the 3 strikes law. You know, when we first get locked up, a lot of us were blaming everybody. And at a certain point in time, we tend to look in the mirror and determine it's us that put us there. Department of Corrections doesn't have a lot of programs in there for a person to, you know, deal with the substance abuse and the issues which they may have, but many of us took steps to address those illnesses that we had, which contributed to our choices in the past. With me, it was dealing with my substance abuse. Once I dealt with that, then it was licked. You know, I felt it was licked. There's others that this law would affect, this law change would affect, who I went to the same treatment groups with, Akeem Shadid, Michael Bridges, and there are others. These men deserve a second look. A lot of us were doing the work in the dark, not knowing that there'd ever be an opportunity to come before any board to be considered for release. You know, I'm standing here today in support of this bill for men like those. Those men I know in my heart, I know have made changes. They're good men. And given a chance to look for somebody, an independent party, to look at them and look at the accomplishments which they've done behind bars, you know, I believe that they'll come back to society and be better than when they went in, just as I have. And I really appreciate the fact that Senator Kline stepping forward on this legislation. I appreciate Dan Satterberg you know, and for those that are in support, I appreciate all of you also, because this is a law change that needs to be done. It's not soft on crime. What it is being smart on punishment. And that I'll close. Thank you.
Okay, now it's time for questions of any of the three of us.
Why isn't this available now? I see Chief Turner is here, he's on the board. With Stephen, he got out in 16 years?
I got out after 15 years and 8 months.
Why does it need to change if that mechanism is already in place?
The mechanism you're referring to being clemency. Yeah. Clemency and pardon are the governor's constitutional functions. They depend on several things. First, who's governor? Secondly, how much volume can those, how many cases can those functions address? How many people who justly do rise to this level are going to be pardoned by any governor? The real question, I think, is why justice should depend on so many variables. Shouldn't there be an institution whose job it is to do this on a regular basis in a way that's insulated from politics and in a way that can handle the number of cases involved, which, by the way, is not a great number, 16 to 20 in this case, and there will be some in the future. We're not talking about high volume, but we are talking about too many, I think, for any given governor.